Yes, so to finish us off for tonight, we have quite the well-known movie Battle Royale, a Japanese movie from 2000, based off, I forget, I'm assuming the novel came first and then it was a manga, but I haven't read either one. But we pretty much all know the story. A bunch of school kids get brought to an island. I think there's 42 of them, and they're told, hey, you have to kill each other off. And the winner, either one of you survives, or in 3 days, anybody left surviving dies. And they do so. And it is indeed a battle royale. I think this movie's I've seen this, let's say, 4 or 5 times. So I've not seen it like that many times, but I've never failed to have been amazed by this one. I legitimately think it's a beautiful movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. So, so to those of you who don't know, I write reviews for movies, and after I wrote my review for this one, I just checked out the length, and there was about 1,000 words worth of review. It's like 15 paragraphs. It's like more like an essay, and there's not that many movies I would write that much about. But Battle Royale, I think, has so many fantastic elements. I mean, I think it's the perfect movie, but I can understand some problems about it. But it's definitely an experience that I would highly recommend anybody, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you check it out. I personally do consider it like a horror action drama type movie. But I know there's a lot of people who don't see this even as a horror movie. Which is fine, because it sort of transcends all of that. So, it's a movie that I highly recommend. I think it's a very emotional experience. I just think there's a lot about this movie to enjoy. And I have no idea how Chaka feels about this one, so it's maybe an interesting discussion.
Well, yeah, this one had a lot of hype around kind of the early 2000s when it was getting seen by a lot of people. I don't think it necessarily got all that much attention until a few years later, once it got released on DVD in most places. I don't think I think it got released on DVD in Australia maybe 2003, maybe. So I saw it somewhere around that time. I remember renting it from the video store. And I didn't know too much about it going into it. All I knew was that people were saying it was good. It definitely surprised me, I think, because I tend to not avoid, but I definitely limit my viewing of foreign movies, just because I guess I'm someone who just feels like reading subtitles is a chore. I know sometimes you can get dubbed versions, but we all know that sometimes dubbed versions just make the movie ridiculous anyways. But yeah, I thought I liked the movie. I think the idea is truly horrific. Especially, I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it. Back then, when I first watched the movie, I mean, my daughter, I think she was only just born, or hadn't even been born at that time. It was right around that year that she was born, and now she's around the age that these kids are. She's 16, so just thinking of putting her in this, having her in this situation, you think, God damn, just randomly one day going to school or whatever, and then you're told, okay, now it's time to kill everyone.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, these are kids that you've been around your whole life, and then all of a sudden, all these friendships, you've known each other for years. It's like Lord of the Flies, only it's a lot more, I guess, aimed toward the modern audience. I first saw this when I was a teenager. I was like maybe 10, 11, 12. So it just like hit me hard. Just like imagine, a fascist government throwing kids into a situation like this, and it really is horrific.
It's kind of unfair that they all get given supposedly random things, but we know that some of it's not exactly random.
The fact that one guy came back for another bag, talk about a dick. Like, I sort of like how the teacher was like, okay, yeah, he can do that.
Yeah. And then, like you said, you've got these people, they've got all these different friendships, so some of them are expecting to still be friends and not kill each other, while some of them is like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna have to kill people so I don't die. And it is interesting to see all these different, who's, I wouldn't say, I mean, sometimes it's more mentally weak or mentally unstable. You've got all these different types of people. You've got the maniacs, and you've got the people who are trying to, band together and survive, even though there's technically no way to survive. Well, except for that one guy who's trying to stop the, whatever you call it, the neck things from exploding. Which I kind of found amusing that, this guy's got this computer.
That guy was one. I really liked that guy. That was a fantastic guy.
Yeah. But, it's definitely an intriguing movie throughout. I mean, it's even like watching just wrestling in a way, because they've got the Royal Rumble, which is a similar thing to this. You got like 30 people, and they're all fighting until there's one person left, and it's the same thing here, and it's intriguing to see who's going to bite the dust, who survives, or who wins, so to speak. It's always exciting, and there's no moments in the movie where I felt disinterested. So, even though there are certain movies or certain parts to the movie where it slows down a little bit, it's always holding my interest. So, and for a foreign movie to do that, that's, I would say, quite special, at least for me, even though I still don't think it's a perfect movie, so I'm sure you're going to rate it higher than I will, but in terms of foreign movies, this is probably right up there with the best of them, in my opinion.
One of the reasons I think this movie works is, and like I said, I saw this when I was, somewhat close to this age range, but, all these kids, like, they're just, like, young teens, they're still dealing with like crushes on each other, and they can't even speak to each other openly about emotions, and some of that might even be a cultural thing too. But like, there's a few characters in this movie. This one guy spends like half the movie trying to find this one girl, and then he dies, and then so he admits he loves the girl, and she's like, well, you never even spoke to me. Like, and it's just, I mean, that type of emotional, it's like that type of attitude, like. Back when you're a teenager, I certainly know that feeling. You have affection for someone, but you're too scared to say anything, and then being thrown in a situation like this, I don't know. It's a movie that has an impact on me, and especially like when you get to the end, like the music throughout the movie is fantastic. There's a lot of like classical music and very strong, like I don't know, that's really great music. And at the end, they have a song by an artist known as Dragon Ash, which is, I'm not going to try to pronounce the song title, but I think it's ever since I first saw this movie, I thought it was a fantastic song. And there's a few things I would probably change. I'm not sure if this is in other versions of the movie, but the version I have on DVD has like sort of like 3 extra scenes at the end, like elongated dream sequences, and I'd probably those aren't really necessary to the movie, but I still think they were fine. And just the whole ending of this movie is just like an emotional roller coaster. And there's so many interesting characters. The brutality in this movie is top notch. Which is controversial because these people are kids, and there's such great violence. A lot of it's gunfire, but there's just some like knives and sharp objects and that type of stuff. Some suicides. So it's a very interesting, evocative movie. And I've never seen the second movie. And to be honest, I sort of don't want to, because I've heard that it's nowhere near as good as this one, and I just can't imagine many movies being as good as this one.
No.
But this is definitely a movie. Like even when I first saw it, I didn't love it, but I still definitely appreciate what it's going for. And having seen it now as many times as I have, it's really a movie that leaves an impact on me. And it's just a fantastic movie.
Well, I did watch part 2 at one point, many years ago, probably like 15 years ago, something like that. I can't recall exactly, but I don't recall it being anywhere near as good as the first, but I don't think it was bad either. I'll have to watch that again. I don't know if you mentioned or if you plan to mention this, but I think it needs to be said. Fuck the Hunger Games.
Yeah, so actually I didn't mention that. I've never actually read the books or seen the movies. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't honestly know much about the Hunger Games. So I did want to bring that up, man, because it's like, I can bash on them, but I haven't seen them. So, I mean, if you've seen them, by all means. But
it just feels like they ripped off this movie so much. I mean, sure, they changed some details, but in essence, it's the same thing. And then, I mean, it's so sad to see, at least back when the Hunger Games was really popular, no one, I mean, outside of, obviously, horror fans or people who already had seen Battle Royale, you know, it's almost like no one gave it any credit. You know, they gave all the credit to the Hunger Games for having this wonderful, unique, you know, brutal type movie, which we know has already existed in the form of Battle Royale. I mean, we see pro athletes reading the Hunger Games before their fucking match. I mean, for like, oh my god, it's such a great story. It's so, you know, fuck it.
yeah, so once I read the Hunger Games, I will get back to you on that. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
LeBron James can shove that book up his ass.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all I had to say.
And actually, there's something else I think that might be worth mentioning. This movie, it's a pretty brutal movie, and it's, you know, in many ways it's depressing. Though I do think the ending dialogue is like very hopeful, but there's also a little sort of like a black comedy element of this movie, like that video that they watch that explains, like, you know, the Battle Royale program, like the exuberant Japanese woman. It's like, oh, it looks like whoever got this is going to be lucky. Like that whole little scene when they're watching the video, it's just pretty funny, and like especially the teacher Akitano, like toward the end of the movie, you know, his like last phone call. You know, there's just a few elements of black comedy thrown in here, which honestly they don't even, at least to me, they don't even feel that out of place. I'm not sure exactly why this is the case, but this movie just connects to me, and I don't know. I personally, there's so much engaging material here. There's so many interesting characters. It almost makes me sort of want to read the source material, because I know there's so much more backstory. I mean, that one insane chick. I mean, like that. There's a flashback toward the end of the movie. You know, it shows like them playing basketball, and there's a flashback, you know, when she's watching the game and she just feels so out of place. You know, socially awkward. You know, I don't know. There's so much here that it just makes the movie so much more. It gives it so much more depth. It's just fantastic. I can't say it enough.
Maybe it's also because you enjoy the fact that I don't know if it's Japan specifically, but I know somewhere in Asia it's quite common to find vending machines with used panties in them.
Well, I believe. Well, to be honest, I've never heard of that, but I can believe that's a thing, and that certainly seems like something that would come from that part of the world, be it somewhere in Asia or Australia.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to know how intentional the comedy is, just because sometimes some things they do are just so weird.
Well, yeah, actually, now you mention it, I read a somewhat interesting review from this movie, and it's from a Japanese guy, and it was sort of like a new perspective because, you know, I'm from the USA, but, you know, a guy who lived in Japan his whole life, looking at this movie and seeing that there's many things in Japan, a lot of the mainstream entertainment is sort of, it's more keyed into the youth. So, like, it's a lot more, I guess, I don't know, the entertainment, it's just more, like, childlike. And that's what a lot of people, you know, enjoy in Japan, not just kids, but like, throughout the age range. So that's why, the one training video. I mean, it just, after reading that review, it just makes sense to me that some of this stuff is just the culture of Japan. And to be fair, I've obviously never been to Japan, but I just think it's for a foreign movie. This is just a very interesting log, and I'll be honest, I don't know much about Japanese government, but the idea of any government going to sort of like a totalitarian thing like this, even if was unemployment at like 15%, I think it said at the beginning, like, it just, so much interesting political stuff in this movie that they don't even touch on that much. So much interesting military stuff, and like I said, other cultural issues between the kids. Like, even the main character whose father committed suicide. There's so much in this movie, which is why I certainly recommend anybody who's not seen it, give it a look. I think it's pretty obvious to say, and like I said, my review for this movie is like 1,000 words, and I'll post that eventually for anybody who may or may not be interested in reading my ramblings. But I'm giving this movie a 10 out of 10, which is pretty consistent to what I've given the movie every time I've seen it. I think this, like I said, there's a few changes I would make, but nothing serious, and I think it's a perfect movie.
I'm giving it an 8. I mean, that's my rating for a very good movie. I think, even if you're not interested in the emotional aspects of the movie, there's still enough entertainment here to at least be somewhat enjoyable. So it works on a number of different levels, no matter what you're trying to get out of the movie. You can get emotional things out of it, you can get violent entertainment out of it. I had a good time with it.